For this introductory activity, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a data set using Stata. So the data that we're going to look at is a subset of data collected by the Montana Office of Public Instruction. And the variables that we're going to use for this example would be school class, and school class is represented by AA, A, B, and C. And if you look down here, these are the size of the schools. So for example, AA has more than 779 students enrolled. Class A, 307 to 778 students enrolled, etc. And then we have gender. It's labeled F for female, M for male. And then this data is also coded as 1 equals male and 2 equals female. Another categorical variable that we have is meal status. And the symbols that we have, or the labels we have, are N is labeled 1, and it's equivalent to no. So they do not receive any kind of free or reduced lunch. R is for reduced lunch, and F is for free lunch. And then days present are just interval level data that's entered directly for the number of days that they attended school. Now, what we're going to do is enter this data into Stata. So I'm going to open up Stata, and I'm going to pull these over so we can toggle back and forth. And I'm going to go up to the data editor, and I'm going to go edit data. And so what that's going to do is give me a spreadsheet to work with. And so the first set of data that I'm going to enter is the record or the ID. And so I'm going to put a 1 and then a 2. And I can either click or I can on my mouse, or I can use enter. So that should be a 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And technically, the row could also be the identifier variable, but just for this example, we'll use these numbers to identify each record or each case. And then I want to make sure that I name this case. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to double click on variable, and then I'm going to call this record for record number, or I could label it ID, but we want to keep those labels short. And the other thing is we cannot have spaces, or Stata won't save it. And so when I click on that, then you notice that it adds the record number or the column label. And so then for my next one, I'm going to enter A, double A, B, C, A, or double A, and double A. Now, the other thing I want to mention is these are string variables. They're not numerical variables, but we can convert them to numerical variables when we label them, and that will be in another video. So again, I can click on variable 2. I can come down here, and I'm going to call this school class. Now remember, I can't put any spaces in between. And then I'll click on that, and then it'll label my column. So we can continue, and then with gender, female, male. And these don't necessarily have to be capitalized. It's just the way that I happen to get them out of the data subset of data I was working with. Okay, and then I'll double click on this, double click on this variable, come down here, double click on that so it's highlighted, and I'll call this gender. And then we see that the column is labeled gender. And then finally, and you'll notice in the results section of Stata, it provides the code for doing that. And luckily, we don't need to do any coding. We can use the pull-down menu. And so then my last variable is going to be days present. So 173, 176, 171, 171, 174, 165, 171, and 174. Okay, so now I have my data entered. Oops, I need to label this variable, call it days. And here I can use an underscore if I want to separate those. And Stata will allow me to do that. But again, no spaces are allowed. So here I've created my data set. Now, once you create your data set, what you want to do is go up and save it. So I'm going to save as, I'm just going to call it data set 1. Or I could call it introductory activity 1. Maybe that's what I'll call this. Introductory activity 1. Okay. Now I can save this on my desktop or I can save it in a folder. So if I save it to the desktop and save, notice that this is what a Stata data file looks like. And it has the DTA suffix on the end of it, or extension. So that lets you know that it's a Stata data file. So now there's one other way that we can enter data into Stata, and it's using the import technique. So this data set is saved in Stata right now. And so I can, in the data editor, I can do two things. I can edit the data, so that's where we're at right now. Or if I have data that I've opened, then I can browse that data. I can just look at it, but I can't enter it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the command window up, and I'm just going to go clear. Now, this clear cannot have a capital letter, all right? And so what that's going to do is it's going to close this data set that we've created. Notice we have a new data file ready to enter data into. Now I can close Stata, I can do that, but if I don't want to close the program, then I can type in clear, and what that does is it closes the data set I've created. It does not delete it because that data set is still on my desktop here. Another way that we can import data or put data or create a data set into Stata. I'm going to close this Word document, and we can import data. So I have a data set that's already in Excel, and it's the same data set that we just entered in by hand. And so I can go to File, I can go to Import, and I want to import an Excel spreadsheet. And so I browse, and I find out where that's located. I've created a 501 Stata folder, and I'm going to open it. And this is where I have that same data set that's in Excel, and I can open it. And one thing that's very important to do is I want to click on Import First Row as Variable Names, because if I don't do that, then Stata will not label the columns for me. And then I can go OK, and notice I have the same data that I entered by hand. So this is just a little demonstration about how to create data sets and how to save data sets in Stata. One other thing I can do, I can show you, is if I go clear, again, it closes that data set out. And then I can also open my Stata data file that I created, and I kept it on my desktop. So I'm going to go here, and it's right here, open, and here it is again. So there's several different ways to approach entering data into Stata or getting data into Stata, and also saving data sets in Stata so that they can be used again.